Are we recording already?
We're recording already.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. Well, so first of all, first, thank you to you.
Yes, thank you,
Carol. Thank you to the Carol Corey Fine Art Gallery for putting on this phenomenal show. It's my honor, of course, to be with Nathaniel, so thank you for that as well. And we had the privilege of featuring Nathaniel in our May-June health issue. We got to know him, and his talent is certainly undeniable, but I think I can give you a little rose petal here.
Go ahead. I don't get that enough.
You approve.
I approve.
Every issue we feature an artist. That's something we're passionate about. But Nathaniel truly is one of the special ones. Again, his talent is undeniable, but I think we have a nice kinship. Mm-hmm. There's an outlook, a way he works, a way he views the world that I think we all share. And that's been something that's been a privilege to get to know.
Yeah, I got to tell you, I didn't know as much about my life until I read the article myself. That was the most fascinating part, is when you read your life on paper, how real your own life becomes. I did not expect that.
Well, I'm going to use the royal we quite liberally in this conversation, but the truth is the heavy lifting, of course, was
that one
right back there. She took all this and put it in all there.
Made it fantastic.
Yeah. So a lot of credit to you there, Gia. Nathaniel is a master painter, which as far as I can tell, in my opinion, specializes in a unique form of magical realism to some extent. His work spans the globe from as far as Dubai to Florence and throughout the United States. He's appeared in the pages of Open Space, Wall Street International, Aspire magazine, The Pandorian out of London, and many others. He's a part of collections at Coca-Cola, the Hilton. I'm curious about the Pentagon building.
That's an interesting one, because it has nothing to do with what I do now. It was a portrait commission. But I did do it when I was 17.
I think of the Pentagon, you're the first person that comes to mind.
Correct. Well, I've got people that are in the military.
Indeed. G-Man all the way.
Yeah.
This year, among other things, he was included in a new book out of the United Arab Emirates called Super 100 Artists.
Which I had no clue about.
Yeah.
That's the fascinating thing about being an artist, when all of a sudden you get an email from a friend that says, oh, by the way, did you know you're in this book with me? No, I didn't. Oh, wow. Then you Google and research everything about it, because half the time as an artist, you don't know where you end up sometimes.
And the title includes Super N100.
Yes.
So it's not bad.
No. It has, I can't remember the artist, it has Marilyn Minter in it.
I didn't get through all
quite a few heavy hitters, which I was surprised by. I found out that this was very much a collective of I believe one person that has just chosen who they think is making a mark on the Dubai art scene, and it went from everything from local, Abu Dhabi and what have you, to India, to the United States. So it was definitely a who's who to who are they.
Yeah.
And I appreciate that. I appreciated when you have a collective, because it gets redundant to continuously see the same faces all the time.
Correct.
It doesn't influence anymore once a person has already so well known. You just don't, and they also when they stick to the same thing for so long,
And when you're questioning the motives too.
Well, yeah, because to me, I will always call myself a true artist, because I think you have different areas of artists. I think you have artists that go in as a very commercial base. They make a great product. What they make is absolutely beautiful, but we've mixed the lines between like commercial art, graphic art, fine art, performance art. All these arts have kind of been amalgamation and put together and jumbled up in a pot.
Right.
And I find that there are different levels. And I say that I am a true fine artist because I'm making work obviously to make a living off of, but this is me. I'm not making what is for the public. I'm making hopefully what the public will love what I make.
Yes.
Instead of making for the public. And I think there's a lot of artists that also get trapped in, I had a very successful banner 3 years, I'm just going to keep making this. The next thing you know is 40 more years they've been making the same thing. Not that that's wrong. I mean, that's a great business model, but at the same time, there's no flexibility. So that's why I like gallerists that allow flexibility in their artists to keep the transition of their own works going, which to me then is an intrinsic artist.
You think it's a short-term business model too?
Of making the same painting over and over and over again, or
Well, and
well, no, I know way I do, so I'm not saying that that's a bad thing.
No.
Mine just, I give room for it to grow.
following trends.
Oh, I don't think the art world should follow trends.
No, I agree.
Completely. When you follow a trend, you have no soul behind it. That's plain and simple. It would be like if you followed the trend of music, then you're taking the same beats and putting different lyrics to the same beat. That's why DJs and stuff make songs to the same beats. They can just put an overlay of a new vocal on top of it and blend it all together. That's what's happened with the idea of the trend in the art world. Is there is no place for the artist to actually exist because they're rushing to the next art fair. They're rushing to complete this painting because this is what they think is supposed to be done. That would be like the biggest advice I would give to anybody right now that's young. Don't go to school. Just don't go to school. Create your work. Go for 2 years, drop out, get your education of technique and leave. Because all you're going to do is you're just going to start falling into a trend of what the system is telling you to do. Because when you're too young and you don't realize how business works, you're being used in the business.
Educate yourself.
Educate yourself.
Yeah.
Take time. You know? I mean, I know some of this might come back and bite me in the butt a little bit, but it's kind of where I stand. I'm afraid that too many people create with short-sightedness.
Yeah.
And they don't realize like a painting like this could take 2 years to sell. Just because it finished in January, which I did not. I finished this a year ago and I held on to it for 6 months before I varnished it to make sure it was right. Yeah, I see too many paintings that you can just tell they were just left to the side to disappear into the oblivion of the art world.
Right.
And that's a sad place to be when you've been given such a talent in general. You're wasting it by throwing out too much stuff too fast.
Well, I want to read, I grabbed a little bit of your artist statement, and I cut it down a little bit, but I think it's worth mentioning for the foundation of the conversation. Through a universal visual language, my paintings are fables created to communicate moral lessons about how we treat the world in which we exist. Fables are timeless devices to deliver in a simple manner what can be understood and enjoyed by viewers of all ages. As an artist, I present my narrative in a number of ways, using a series of images that represent moments in a story, or by selecting a central moment to stand for the story in its entirety. Unlike the traditional fable, I invent my own storylines, leaving the viewer to imagine the narrative, which is my favorite part. As evident in every one of my paintings, the title is the introduction to the fable that I have presented for the viewer to create their own story in.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. Where do you want me to go with that one? You said it all. Now,
Nowhere.
Nowhere?
No, I just wanted to lay the foundation because I think it's an important facet of your work is that there are different stages to it.
Well, it's the whole fact of it is that a painting can exist with you for 50 years. These are not short reads. These are, not little moments. These are things that you develop your own life with the works. Yeah. You've seen new things. You see different avenues. Case in point, I didn't realize I would have been painting blackbirds in like the last 6 paintings. I didn't know my last name in Eastern Europe meant blackbird. It's a jackdaw. So in a weird way, I've been painting myself in my paintings for years and not even knowing it. So that's like something that brings something immediately new to paintings that I can see completely different, not knowing. So it's all these little things you can learn. And there's also a lot of hidden meanings and allegories in each large painting. You can take the painting and divide it up into probably 20 different conversations within one painting.
Well, that's how our approach was when we were putting together the article.
Yeah.
And Gio was masterfully putting together the article. But we worked together on this part, this idea of it is one painting and multiple paintings in one. You see it one way, and then all of a sudden you see the bee is whispering in the ear of the fox. And what does that mean? And then you notice something in the corner. You notice a different insect or a different flower. Why is this flower more defined and this one is a little more abstract?
Well, and the interesting thing is that you even go with that. Part that people even miss is that you're looking just solely on the surface too. Because if you go and look at the rabbit painting, I have pretty much 6 paintings underneath the surface of that top painting. So I had grasses everywhere and this and that. And it got to the point where I was like, I don't want to be in this environment. I don't feel comfortable in my own painting. And I don't believe in that. I believe that there should be a sweetness in the fact of vulnerability, not off-putting behavior in work.
Does it help you psychologically when you begin a painting and you're in one place and then you find yourself at the end in a completely different space?
I've had paintings completely change my psychology of how I even live my life. Yeah. Based on how I would look at the paintings. And I would have like 6 to 8 paintings going on at a time. And I'd all of a sudden be like, you're in a funk. You're looking at the world wrong. Because I can look at the paintings and I can see a aggressiveness or a unstableness, a lack of awareness or attentiveness to finding beauty in something. And if I'm not finding beauty in something, there's something wrong in my life. And it's not trying to figure out or fix anything. It's just more about being aware of that. And what I found is there are 2 paintings in this show that every show kind of has 2 from the previous series, and 2 of the paintings have a tendency, or 1 painting has a tendency to be going into what I'm going into next. So there's always an slight overlap. And there's 2 paintings in the show that if you are perceptive enough, you can see those paintings. And then you realize that I was definitely in a more claustrophobic space in my life. And I can tell you in the chain of looking at the paintings in a dialogue of conversation, how I started lightening and coming out of it. Because in this show, all these paintings technically are in the same pond or the same waterfall or the same square footage. You're seeing how you're coming into something and then leaving it in a different psychological space. So because it's like, that's the end painting, but you can see how the monkey on that wall is looking at that. This here, if you were to go at the top and be looking over the waterfall, that's this view. And then if you go from this end, that's the rocks into that painting. Then you look at the rocks on the top of that painting, and you notice they're in that painting. So there technically is a traveled time through the paintings. And if you look at the grasshopper there, you can see that that might be the other side of the rock there with the blue crocus just peeking out at the bottom. But that's hidden. So some of my smaller works are actually the spatial plane behind the paintings, and I'm actually letting you get little rear view mirrors of other parts of the painting that you never would have seen. But I didn't realize they existed until I started painting it, because nothing has a starting point.
Right. That's
nothing has a starting point.
You begin essentially figuratively and literally with a blank canvas.
100%.
You don't know where you're going.
The only thing I know that if I want to start is it like a color that I'm just attracted to. Right. And this is what I always think gets people, like, I've always been attracted to fashion. I'm a Taurus, dead center Taurus. I love aesthetics and everything else. But I realized that Bridgerton inspired almost this entire show. I salivated over the lilacs and the mustards and the taupes and with the soft greens. And if you look at that, I mean, that's Bridgerton in a painting. And it's that whole thing of where that, or on Sandington, all these kind of, well, I'll call the PBS shows, the period movies. I found out that it's a palette that I love. But then I also realized that there's something about showing color, but showing the softer side of color. You have to understand how ugly actually creates pretty. So I learned that you have to find the moments of distasteful color to make other color beautiful. Where too many people think straight out of the tube. I have a lot of straight out of the tube paint in my paintings, but it's offset because I'm allowing the bottom of the solvent, in a sense, that gunk of color show into the painting. Yeah. So that also shows the difference between the manufactured and the mush of human quality.
It plays to your work as well, the way I see it, because it's beautiful and at times creepy too.
Oh, absolutely. Haunting. I like haunting. I like haunting much more.
Yeah, I'll put a haunting over it.
Yeah.
Haunting, but like a Brothers Grimm kind of thing.
100%. The whole idea is that you don't know where you're settling in the real, the imagination, or the full falseness. And you're kind of swimming in the same pool. But if for some reason, to me, it works, because it's the whole idea of, sometimes you got to fake it for yourself to make yourself feel like you're something.
Well, let's start with where you felt like something. So I want to, when we were looking at your life from the very beginning of all of this, what I love about your story is there's no trace of you doing anything else. And so the beginning question,
I love
if you can believe it, is did you know you were meant to be an artist?
No, I tried to abandon it my entire life. No, okay. I played tennis. I almost went pro. I did tennis starting at like 9. I did ballet starting at 3. Ended that at 15. Then it kind of overlapped into tennis. I was about 19. I'm about finished with high school. I was already going to art school because that's what I was being pushed into. Fortunately, it did do the right thing because I all of a sudden woke up in a clinic and I was like, I don't want to teach 7-year-olds for the rest of my life how to hit a tennis ball. That's my life. And I was like, nope, I'm going to go and do that. Then when I was in college, halfway through college, I started doing makeup artistry. And I was a national artist for Dior for like 10 years. And art was always the side. But it was always came back to it. Even when I tried to fight it away, it always found its way back. I don't feel like I ever had a choice to walk away. You know, and also then I did mural work, I did interior design work. I've done all this, but the thing is it's the weirdest thing is how all those things seriously kept me alive, but it was always, I did it in a haze. Mm-hmm. All of this has been more for my soul. And I realized that I was continuously running away from that one thing that was always helping me. And it was that one day, pretty much, in the article, I met my late husband and he cussed me out on our first date when he found out I was an artist and had abandoned it. And I realized I was missing everything that was going to be important in my life.
Well, let me rewind for just 10 seconds.
Okay.
Because it seems from the outside looking in that you were an artist, whether you wanted to be or not, as you're alluding to.
Yeah.
And I've spoken to other creatives and people I've worked with just last week where I feel like there's a voice, and Gia corrected me, not everyone feels this way, but I feel like creative hears that voice all the time, whether they want it or not. Always in the corner. So when I look at even as a child, I want to get this right, you drew an anatomically correct whale at the age of 3, a horse at 4, at the age of 6, you were in adult classes, correct? With people 30 and over.
Yeah, that was always like the hardest part because it's always hard to discuss this without sounding arrogant while saying it. I was always in a place, I know it's us, so I can say whatever. I've always been put into a system where I never matched the talent of my age or the age of my talent. And problem is that I was in classes with 40, 50-year-old people and I'm 9. And I've always was that anomaly, that show. And I think that's why I always kind of tried to walk away from it because I felt it was all theater and attention. But I wasn't getting the type of attention I wanted. It was more like I was the freak show. And because I tell people, and I'll show several of you later, I found a painting that I did when I was, I think, 10 or 11. It's this. It's a watercolor. And it's exactly this. I think I showed you, didn't I? I've been painting the same paint. Yeah, I showed you. I've been painting the same painting since I was 5 years old. I've just been refining, in a sense, the same painting. That's why I have this kind of contradictive thing with saying, doing like people that do the same painting every day of their life. Well, I have too. I just tried to progress with it. Right. I'm not making a carbon copy.
Make a note of that.
Yeah.
You have to see this watercolor when he was 10, 11, whatever.
I was 10 or 11.
Yeah. I like this one. In Knoxville, your mother petitioned the state to allow you into the Tennessee Watercolor Society, but at age 12.
Oh, 12, yes.
Yeah.
Well, because I wasn't allowed to take art in school.
The minimum was 18.
Yeah. Well, that I think was just because they didn't want you to not be in bed by a certain time because the class I think was like from like 7:30 to 9:30. So, but also too, like when I remember this was one of the hardships with high school and especially being in Tennessee is that I couldn't take high school art until my senior year. So because what it was an elective. So I ended up actually taking drafting and then won, which you guys don't know, I won the state national drafting competition for drafting and building a 6,000 square foot house, doing blueprints and all that kind of stuff. So that's where probably a lot of my pen work and stuff comes is from that. Plus I had exquisite penmanship because I went to a private school and you had to take cursive until you were in 5th grade. Why? I don't know why, but I feel like I was the last. What is the old joke now that just write anything in cursive and anybody under the age of 30 will not know what you're writing?
That's the code.
But of course, then I think I'm like in some 16th century piece every time I write something. I go into my own fantasies.
One of the parts that I love the most, I want to talk a little bit about your influences, and to me, it's such a wonderful combination. It's very eclectic in a sense, but you said your babysitter as a child were movies like Snow White,
Yes.
Cinderella, Sleeping Beauty. So I'm thinking of Gustav Tenggren and Ivan Earl and these masterful background artists, and I mean, these are worlds that I wanted to escape into myself.
Well, it was like Maxwell Parrish to me was like the fine art version of that. And you can see in my work, Maxwell Parrish color tones perfectly. I was also, one thing after all of this, I realized that I was very influenced by Prairie and Craftsman period as well, like Maxwell Parrish, because my mother was very much into Prairie homes and all that. And that probably was the whole Chicago base and stuff like that. But yeah.
It feels very much like what you do now, in a sense. I mean, I watched not too long ago Sleeping Beauty again as a consequence of having a 4-year-old daughter. And, that's good. It holds up. And I see these backgrounds, and you're the first person I thought of. And it's the same idea. It's both beautiful and creepy. I want to go, but I don't want to go to that section over there. And there's something unsettling about the whole thing.
Yeah.
But, anyway.
Well, I think also part of what becomes unsettling to some people is that you realize that I bring almost an animation to plants. Mm-hmm. So I bring the soul of the human into the plant in the paintings. The animals are on their own. The animals stand for what they are, but when you really look at the plant life, these become the stand-in to the humans. Because once again, we'll jump to this later, but this is the representation of the GMO. This is how we have reconstructed the DNA of the plant. So after we are long gone, our DNA of how we've manipulated will be here. Animals, how much can we manipulate a wild deer? You can't. I mean, I'm sure some people have done it, but in general, that'll stay pretty much as clean as possible. But God only knows, and 500 years, how much plant life will not be touched by us at that point. So I think what kind of gives you that unsettling feeling is you start to see the rhythmicness of humankind and the plant life. And then a friend of mine brought up the attention of the fact of that it probably goes back to me doing dance, because when you look at the plant life with everything feels like it's doing a tango or a waltz or some type of formal kind of interlay of movement. And then I realized, well, my grandparents were champion ballroom dancers. So it starts to really be really interesting when you start to all of a sudden realize all these little things that you don't realize. And that's, I will say that I've kind of been deluded at the brilliance of little snippets in my life that I've had that a lot of people have not been able to have. I don't think too many people can say their grandparents were ballroom champion dancers, but I maybe only saw it 2 or 3 times, but it imprinted. That was all I needed, because that's how my mind works. I can see it once and I'm done.
As well as a fine artist, right?
She was an assemblage artist. She would never have considered herself a fine artist. She did not have the support system to call herself that, which is the saddest part. But I think that most women of her age had that problem. Like on my grandfather's deathbed, my whole family was out of town and I was the only one there. It was a very bizarre situation. I was the only one with my grandfather when he died. And one of his very last things was that he apologized that he never gave my mother the opportunity to be the artist that she should have been. And I told her she already is. She always was. Not every woman wants to be a typist or a secretary or a nurse, but we're talking about the time,
Well, I'm going to jump around a little bit here. So you were given the Andy Warhol Foundation grant to Carnegie Mellon, although you chose instead to go to Columbus College of Art and Design, correct?
Correct.
Correct.
I went only there, in all honesty, because I didn't want to take algebra or chemistry. That was what made the decision. Solely was the decision.
Fair enough. Well, good thing you wandered into botany.
Well, that's the thing, is the school that I went to for undergrad was genuinely, in my opinion, one of the only few schools that actually still taught formal painting, true painting. I look at out there today, like why I say jokingly, but it's the truth. The children today are not children. God, how old am I? Youngsters, kids these days. The schools aren't teaching the same way, and I do blame a lot of institutions outside of just school. I blame banking and everything else, and museums. I blame the whole thing of just that it became a machine. and the whole love of wanting to know why color did what and how to make a line and how a thin line affects a thick line. I mean, just the things like you probably were taught that just seems like anybody 35 and younger has zero concept of.
Yeah.
And this is like my joke I always go to, and I know where I'm planning to go this. People are like, well, art is an eye of the beholder. And I'm like, well, I get that to a certain extent, but just putting like 7 letters on a page does not make it a haiku. You've got to have something underneath, and however you get to that, you've got to learn how to train yourself to get there.
What I find is refreshing about you, though, is your embrace. Again, I'm tying it from there to even now, but your embracing of traditional masters.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Which I don't want to call it retro. What is old is new again, but Lord knows.
This is what I always say is I still say that traditional anything has a universal language.
Yeah.
And I feel like you can feel the energy when something, and I hate the term traditional. What I will say is that it's a standard of respect.
Yeah.
And tradition to me can be even something from 1950 something. It's just, to me, it's the fact that I'm looking at art as a 10,000 year process that was all of a sudden given the middle finger at a certain point, and we're in a window of 70 years. And not that there's anything wrong with that, because I love Joan Mitchell. I can show you things that are like Joan Mitchell or Rothko. I can show you where I've taken essences of those artists. I just feel like if you are making something within the vein of a movement, then you're copying, you're emulating. And that is where we are right now. And that is the mistake that is happening in the art world right now, is that we're emulating too many things instead of making things. The wheel has already been invented. Take the wheel and figure out how to put a new chassis on it, new car on it, but it's still the same thing. And what I've done is I have embraced history instead of trying to eradicate history to make something new. Okay.
Well, to that end, when I look at your work, I'm seeing, of course, Peter Paul Rubens. I'm seeing Japanese influence. Certainly.
Whistler.
Yeah.
See, I also look at a lot of late 18th century, 1800s, early 1900s, like Klimt. There's some Japanese, Korean, obviously with my grandmother, but it's the chinoiserie. Yeah. If you were looking at things, if you know chinoiserie wallpaper, de Gournay wallpapers, things like that, that's what I was around. I'm just taking a more refined, contemporary version. And that's the other thing too, is I was told for too long that my work was not contemporary. And that killed me every time, because I finally realized that everybody was confusing contemporary with modern.
Right.
And I kept trying to say Rubens was contemporary at one time. Sargent was contemporary. Warhol was contemporary, but technically he's more modern. Right. It's like, understand, and this is the thing, is that people also don't understand. Movements happen organically. Trends happen deliberately. The trends are based on what do we need to sell and keep selling, because they already have something of that. You make trends in fashion because nobody needs another pair of shoes until they're destroyed. But you make them think they want a new pair of shoes because of that. But if you're an artist that has an individual movement and keeps moving forward, then you can have a collector that can keep buying every couple of years the new stage of your career. You only will know what the movement is in retrospect, mostly when you are gone.
Yeah.
People in, let's say Pollock, Joan Mitchell, Morris, all these people, they knew they were part of something, a collective, but it was an undefined movement until after it's already happened. And then once it's already happened, that's when you get all the latch-ons that try to keep producing, and then you're not in the essence of it anymore. You're just making.
The moment's passed.
You're just making. Yeah, because Joan Mitchell, there can only be one. Anybody can make a painting like that to a certain extent, but she was living the moment. It was a reaction to things.
It's coming from a genuine
place.
It's
a genuine place.
Yeah. I would like to talk for a moment about your process and how you begin a painting. Technically speaking, what's involved, because this is no light task.
No, yeah. First off, I construct all my own panels. I could never have a studio assistant. I could never have anybody paint for me or any of that. But I do the paintings that are on panel, then I put jute or linen on, and then I take marble plaster, put it in with resin, mix that up, trowel on, like the 1500s, like Titian, Rembrandt, all of that. And then I do that with a colored ground, and then do all my painting, and then varnish, and then 3 coats of wax, and gold leafing, and
Pen and ink.
Pen and ink.
You want to talk about the inkwell?
I have an inkwell from 1910 that I use. My same friend that was talking about the ugly color that said that if you do not paint with beauty, you will never make beauty. And I believe in the continuation of energy. I believe in past and future lives. I don't believe in a beginning or an end. I just believe in existing. But existing is refined and elegant as possible. Doesn't mean I can't be a total, wackadoo, but I believe that beauty is the healing agent in life. And if you have something beautiful in front of you, it allows you to create beauty. If you're within chaos, you create chaos. And I find hold to that.
Well, I don't want to get this wrong, but even just our lovely monkey, 15 layers just for the hair on this monkey.
Oh, yeah. Correct? Yeah. The monkey itself off and on took 2.5 months to paint.
Yeah. When I was photographing in his studio, you use about 40 to 75 paintbrushes.
Okay. I will tell you, like this one flower, if you were to look at my table once, next to the palette, I probably have anywhere between 30 to 50 brushes that were just to probably paint the one petal.
Yeah.
Because I don't, I go to the old school of where that's the dap of that color, that's the dap of that color, that's the dap of that color, and then I blend and then it's not right. So then I'll go to another brush and I don't re-dirty the other brush because that color is specific to a spot. Right. So then I'll go back to that brush to go back on. And then my brushes usually at the end get probably about only like 7 uses because they're on average only about 10 hairs. So I use up into quadruple aught brushes. And if anybody doesn't know what aught is, it's 0. So where a normal brush would be 1, 2, 3, 4, I'm going the opposite direction. Mm-hmm. So I've got brushes that even have literally 5 hairs to some extent. And after you've used them a few times, they're unfunctional. They're basically the ferrule of the brush and it's just a metal stub.
If I urge, you've seen it already, but I urge you, go up to that monkey, go up to the fox and just, really get in there and take a look, which again, references again. I could walk into this gallery and for 5 minutes, look at your work and be blown away, but come back in 2 hours and I'm still blown away even more. Yeah.
So. You find more to see. Well, it's interesting because the hairs, if you look at on the fox there, if you go and you look at Rubens' drawings, you'll see that I embrace the movement of how he did the curls of the hair. I don't think we reference master drawings enough to actually learn how the swipe of the hand should even be. That's the thing is that I don't feel like people want to develop the touch, the sophistication of a touch. Listen, it's like if you're doing the right work for you, it's the best lover you'll ever have. It'll fight you back, but eventually it's the best moment ever. And it's that moment of just fulfillment afterwards that I just don't think anybody will ever understand when you are truly sincere to your own work.
What do you see? We've talked a lot about your perspective on the art world today and in the past, and of course we could talk a bit more about where you think it might go, but I'm also curious about where you think your contribution is. What are people going to say about Nathaniel?
Oh, I could ruin my career with that statement. No, I find, you want the truth, I think we're going back to traditional work. I think people are tired.
Yeah.
I think people are emotionally tired with too much information. I think they're tired with too many things that look the same. I can equate it to cars, furniture, apartments. We've lost, the craftsmen are still there. They're just not allowed to do it anymore. And it's not a cost thing. It's not. Like moldings and things for homes, you can make a mold. Just hire the person, pay them right, and make something beautiful, then reuse that.
Yeah.
But I do think we're going back where there is this point of where people are realizing they have not been allowed enough, if that makes sense. I think the world has been scared to show talent. And to me, it's the fact of I think we are having a society that is walking away from the idea of the singular point of view. And now I feel like this is the one part that I like about the younger groups, especially with the financial con of school, is they're not willing to go to school anymore. So I think you're going to start seeing this leap of 15, 20-year-olds, 30-year-olds under 30 that are going to be blowing our minds in the next 20 years. Because I believe that this is a group that is tired of being known, which everybody that wanted to be, that's a millennial, wanted to be known, needed to be the celebrity, needed to be the art star, because that's what grad school was for, to be the next art star. It wasn't about improving yourself. It was about how much could the school get attention. We're now having people that aren't even going to school and don't care about the system as much.
Well, let's talk about you in all of this. Do you view yourself now, if this is the future that awaits us, which sounds good to me, do you view yourself as a pioneer of sorts,
100%,
a leader?
100%.
Yeah.
100%. I refuse to veer off my own course. I refuse. I realized that if I had been trying to push away from being this for so long, and this is still where I am, then I did not have a choice. Which brings me back to your first. I knew we would get there eventually. But the end of the day is,
Yeah, question two.
Yeah, I would, to question two, I know, right? I would rather be the quiet, okay, I will say this as an arrogant artist. I would like to be the quiet hero. But then I will say, then I'll take away the hero, I would like to be the champion. But I'm willing to bring the people that have the same ethos with me and let them guide in their own way too. I do not need to capitalize on an ego. I already know what I can do. I love the accolades. I mean, who doesn't? But I don't need that. I need to know that I'm seeing my place in time by seeing other people finding their place. I think that's more important. I feel like sometimes like I almost became a teacher without being a teacher.
Yeah.
Because I'm very, very giving back to people in the art world. And I try to help because I don't have any fear, because nobody else can paint this. This has taken too much trauma in my life to get here, and my own experiences. I have no fear of anybody. If anybody tried this, they would fail miserably. And that's the way that I look at any really good artist that has a true passion to show themselves, is that nobody can copy what you're doing. So feel secure in that and just be present and be present with people. But stay away at the same time. Like don't go out too much. Don't go to the open, oh, that's really bad to say to a gallery. I feel like choose the galleries that you respect and just go there. Don't go around as if you are literally searching for the Holy Grail, because it's not there. You're already in the toughest career that can exist in the world, because nobody needs this, but simultaneously, this is the only thing that's going to hold the world together. That's the irony of being an artist. Anytime any society has been any group is trying to destroy a culture, the first thing they go to destroy is their artifacts. They steal their artifacts, get rid of their beauty, get rid of their visual language. As soon as they do that, they have destroyed that culture. They have destroyed the soul and the ego of that society. And that's where if you go out and you're always looking to fit in, you'll always be lost. You will have no voice. You have to have your voice by doing what you do and finding people in kind that speak the same language. And then that goes back to a movement. I already know I'm in a movement. I've seen artists that are doing similar. We might be a decade off or so. But remember, people, movements are 60, 70, 100-year movements.
I'm going to give you hero. I'm going to give you champion. I'm not going to give you quiet.
Okay.
But I think that puts us in a pretty good place.
Okay.
My pleasure. It's an honor.
Oh.
Yeah. Thank you again.
Thank you, Carol.
Thank you. Yeah.